Yo, what's going on, guys? It's the Draft Nerd, and today we are going to be finishing round 2 and 3 of my mock draft. If you missed round 1 of the mock draft, go to my channel. That happened yesterday. So without further ado, let's get started with round 2. Alright, coming in at number 33, we got the Cleveland Browns, and they ended up going with Abdul Carter in round 1, edge rusher out of Penn State. Now, when you look at the board, what do the Browns love to do? They love running the ball. And Nick Chubb, although it was amazing to see him come back, he is a free agent, and he's just not the same player as he used to be. He's just not, and it sucks. But I think the Browns are going to have to look to move forward from Nick Chubb. And with a guy like Omarion Hampton on the board here at 33, he gives you what Nick Chubb gave you, which was really just hard-nosed running, and I think this is a perfect fit. You know, the Browns love to run the ball. I know they're going into a full rebuild, so getting a running back in round 2, is that the most, important position to get? Not necessarily, but we've seen over the past 2 or 3 years that the running back position is making a comeback. The running back position is very, very important now that a lot of defenses are running too high shells where, it's really hard to make explosive plays in the pass game. Teams are looking to go with, an explosive run game with, more empty boxes. So I think Omarion Hampton could be a really good pick here, and it's not like he's an old running back prospect. Yeah, he'll be 22 in his rookie season, so he'll have a good 5 years in him to be a really good running back. So we're gonna go with Omarion Hampton to the Browns. On to number 34, we got the New York Giants, and they got their quarterback, hopefully of the future, in a Shedeur Sanders. Now it's time to either focus on offensive line or secondary. And with a guy like Benjamin Morrison here, his talent level is way better than a round 2 pick, but there's a lot of concerns about his hip injury that he suffered last year in 2024. In my opinion, I don't think he would have declared if he thought his hip injury was going to be a problem. We just don't know yet, and that's why he's fallen all the way to 34. The Giants need a cornerback 1. Tay Banks was not a good cornerback 1 for the Giants last year. I think he's a really good number 2. I think he could suffice as a number 2 cornerback, but we need a number 1 cornerback. And I think as long as Benjamin Morrison is healthy and his hip is fine, I think he could be that cornerback 1. Now, you could also go with a Gray Zabel, a Jahdae Barron, who's maybe a more safe pick, but I like Jahdae Barron a little bit more in the slot, and the Giants have Drew Phillips, who's been really good in the slot last season as a rookie, so I don't necessarily think he's an option here. Trey Amos and Siobhan Revell are also really good. Siobhan Revell also has tore his ACL, so he's got a bit of an injury concern. Trey Amos is maybe the safer pick, but I think you got to take a swing on a Benjamin Morrison. If his hip is healthy, he's a top 15 player in this draft. So we're going to go with Benjamin Morrison to the Giants. On to number 35, we got the Tennessee Titans, and I think they could look to go receiver. You got Cam Ward, but he doesn't really have anyone to throw to. Calvin Ridley's there, but besides that, who else is there? When you look at the depth chart, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, he's a free agent. Tyler Boyd, he's a free agent. Treylon Burks, he could probably step in and fill one of those roles, but besides that, who you have? You need someone that could, help Cam Ward move the ball. And I think a guy like Jack Bech could be that guy. Jack Bech is a big-bodied receiver at 6'2", 215, and he's just such a good, smooth receiver. He had a really good Senior Bowl as well. Having him be that bigger receiver, Calvin Ridley can operate in the slot and on the outside. And then Treylon Burks, you can get whatever you can out of him. So I think we're going to go with Jack Bech. We could also go with an Xavier Restrepo if you wanted a slot option. Alec Umanor is also a really good prospect, but I just think after Jack Bech's Senior Bowl, he deserves to be an early day 2 pick, so we're going to go with him to the Titans. On to 36, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I think that this could be a Gray Zabel pick. They need interior offensive line help desperately. They ended up going Mason Graham in the first round. You could also look to go with a Trey Amos, Jahdae Barron, and Siobhan Revell as well, because they could use a cornerback alongside Tyson Campbell. But Brandon Sheriff's a free agent. If they do decide to bring him back, he is 33 years old, so he's not a spring chicken by any means. So they could look to get a replacement at right guard. Ezra Cleveland, Mitch Morse also aren't incredible players. I think they're replaceable. So Gray Zabel could replace one of those positions, whether that's right guard, left guard, even center, really. I think he could play that as well. So we're going to go with Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State. On to 37 here, we got the Las Vegas Raiders, who ended up going with Tetairoa McMillan in the first round to fix that receiving problem. They could look to go quarterback here. I mean, Dylan Gabriel, Jalen Milroe, those are definitely feasible options, but I don't think we're going to do that. We could look to go that in round 3, but for right now, we're going to turn our attention to cornerback with, 3 really good options here in Jahdae Barron, Trey Amos, and Shavon Ravel. But looking at their depth chart, Nate Hobbs is a free agent who has been their nickelback. Also, Darnay Holmes, who is their backup slot corner, is also a free agent. Jack Jones, Jacorian Bennett. I think Jacorian Bennett is a bit replaceable as well. So when you look at the board here, Jahdae Barron, who was really good at outside corner last year, had 5 interceptions playing outside corner. I think he can survive on the outside, but he's also a really good slot corner at 5'11", 200. So, really wherever the Raiders want to play him, whether they want to replace Jacorian Bennett and play Jahdae Barron on the outside, or if they want to just play him in the nickel because they don't really have no one there because they're all free agents. Either way, I think Jahdae Barron's a really good fit to go to the Raiders. On to 38, we got the New England Patriots, who ended up going Travis Hunter in the first round. Now, I think we're going to look to get offensive line help. Like I said when I was making their first round pick, they need offensive line help to protect Drake May. I just didn't like the value at 4 for offensive linemen. Here at 38, you got a guy like Ariante Urzuri who could play right tackle for him. You got Donovan Jackson if you want to move Micah Wenu and try him at tackle again. Cameron Williams is a good developmental tackle who I think is an option here. But overall, I think we're going to go with Ariante Urzuri. They need tackle help desperately, and I think Ariante Urzuri could be the solution to their problems. Moving on to 39, we got the Chicago Bears, who also pick at 41. Keep that in mind. We ended up taking Ashton Jeanty for them, which I think will be a bit of a controversial pick. But now that we got 2 picks basically back-to-back, we can look to go offensive line here. When you look, we got a Tyler Booker here, who a lot of people think is going to go in the first round, and it's very, very possible. Very possible. So having him fall to 39, I think that's a really, really good pick here. If that happens, then that Ashton Jeanty pick is going to look even more of a home run pick. Now we got Tyler Booker, who can be a really good guard to block for Ashton Jeanty. On to number 40, we got the New Orleans Saints, and we ended up going with Mykel Williams in the first round. Now we're going to look to get a wide receiver. When you think of the Saints, you got Chris Olave, who unfortunately is injury prone. He's got a lot of concussion problems. You got Rashid Shaheed, and then you got no one else really. So you need a receiver to, complete that trio. And I think a guy like Elike Umanor, who's a bit of a bigger body, similar to a Rashid Shaheed, but I think Rashid Shaheed is more of the deep threat. I think Elike Umanor could be that X receiver. Not saying that X receiver means he's the best receiver, but I think he could be that guy who could, break press coverage and get open on the outside, and then have Chris Olave operate a little bit more in the slot. I like that pick a lot. On to 41, we got the Chicago Bears picking again, and I think they could double dip on offensive line and go with maybe a Donovan Jackson here, or Wyatt Milam, even a Jonas Savanaia. I think that's a very possible option, but like I said, if you missed my video yesterday where we did the first round, I said in the case that maybe they get a Trey Smith in free agency, they could go Ashton Jeanty. We got Tyler Booker in the second round. That fixed the offensive line problem enough. I think we're going to look to pair up an edge rusher alongside with Montez Sweat. And when we look at the board, there's a lot of really good names here. Lana Jackson, Princey Umamielen, JT Tuimoloau, Kyle Kennard, Jordan Burch, Jared Ivey. All these guys are, worth this 41 overall pick. But I ended up choosing Princey Umamielen. I think he had a really good season at Ole Miss, and he also has some good seasons at Florida as well. I think he could be that pass rusher. Montez Sweat is also a really good pass rusher and a good run defender. So we're going to go with Princey Umamielen to pair alongside with Montez Sweat. On to 42, we got the New York Jets, who we ended up going with Josh Simmons at number 7, pair up alongside Olu Fashanu. So we got the tackle situation in the bag. Now we're going to look to go with secondary help, I think. Besides Sauce Gardner, that secondary is a bunch of free agents. They're not going to be able to retain all of them, in my opinion. So we're going to look to go cornerback here. And with a guy like Trey Amos and Shavon Ravel still on the board, I think they could be really good, partners to go alongside Sauce Gardner. And I'm going to end up going with Trey Amos, I think. Shavon Ravel, coming off an ACL injury, hasn't played the best competition. I think teams are going to be a little afraid to choose him, high in the draft because of that. Trey Amos is a bit of a better, option here. He's a really good zone coverage corner, in my opinion. Man coverage leaves a little bit to be desired, but I think he's overall just the best cornerback prospect still on the board. So we're going to go Trey Amos to the Jets. On to 43 here, we got the San Francisco 49ers, and we're going to look to go defensive line here, I think. When we look at the board, there's a guy who's still on the board who, some might think shouldn't be on the board, and that's Derek Harmon. I do know that Trevor Sikkema is a little bit lower on Derek Harmon, so that's why he's here at 59. A lot of people think he's going to go easy in the first round. I think he's a fringe first round guy in my opinion, to be honest. And so that's why he's still here at 43. But if he's here at 43, I think that the 49ers would jump all over him. Besides Nick Bosa, they don't have much to work with on that defensive line. When you look at their depth chart, Javon Hargrave's a free agent. Malik Collins is solid but nothing special. Leonard Floyd has been serviceable at most, so they need defensive line help to go and help Nick Bosa, and I think Derek Harmon could be that guy. He had an incredible season, rushing the quarterback, but he was also known as a run stopper before getting to Oregon, so I think he's the best of both worlds, and getting him here at 43 I think is somewhat of a steal. On to 44 here, we have the Dallas Cowboys, and we ended up taking Luther Burden here at 12 because Ashton Jeanty went at 10. So we're going to still look to get a running back here. And there's still a lot of good ones on the board. Cam Scatterbo, Dylan Sampson, Caleb Johnson, Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, all really, really good options at running back. But when I think of the Cowboys, I think of Caleb Johnson. He's, a little bit of a mixture of, size and speed. Cam Scatterbo is just size and pure grit. Dylan Sampson's speed. I think Caleb Johnson and or Quinshon Judkins are a good mix of both. So I think it's really between them two. I'm going to end up leaning Caleb Johnson here, but I wouldn't be mad at a Quinshon Judkins either. On to 45, we got the Indianapolis Colts, and I think Siobhan Ravel's still on the board here. The Colts love their height, weight, speed freaks, and that is what Siobhan Ravel was before his injury at 6'3", 193. He was an amazing athlete as well. I think he's got Colts written all over him, so if he falls to 45 because of that injury, I think the Colts would not be scared to pull the trigger on him at 45. On to 46, we got the Atlanta Falcons, and we ended up going with James Pierce Jr. in the first round, and they don't have a third round pick, so this is the last pick that we'll be having for the Falcons in this video. So we're gonna have to make it count, and by making it count, I think we got to go with a cornerback to pair alongside AJ Terrell. We got Darian Porter on the board, Maxwell Harrison, but I think we're gonna go with Azariah Thomas or Azaria. He's got a weird name. I think it sounds best as Azariah, but apparently it's Azaria. So we're going to go with Azaria Thomas. He's 6'2", 198, and he's a really good physical press corner. And I think the Falcons could really use him. Raheem Morris knows how to use cornerbacks, so we're going to go with Azaria Thomas out of Florida State. On to 47, we have the Arizona Cardinals. Ended up going Shamar Stewart in the first round. Now we're going to look to go with offensive line. Like I said in the first video, the Cardinals are struggling with trenches, whether that's offense or defense. So we're going to look to go with offense trenches now, since we went defensive trenches last round. So we're going to look to probably go with a guy like Donovan Jackson. He's a guard prospect who can, have a little bit of flexibility at tackle. He was pretty good at tackle at Ohio State during the playoffs, so he's shown that he's able to stick at tackle. But I think he's a guard. I think a team's going to draft him to be a guard and can maybe be a swing tackle if, something goes wrong with one of their tackles. So I think he's a versatile piece on that offensive line. I think the Cardinals would love to have him. On to 48, we got the Miami Dolphins. And, we did what the Dolphins probably won't do, and that's go offensive line at 13 with Will Campbell. Now we're going to look to go with probably defensive line. They lost Christian Wilkins a year ago, and they just weren't the same last year because of it. So we're going to look to maybe get his replacement. They have Zach Sealer, who I'm a big fan of, but besides that, there's a lot of free agents. So we're going to go with TJ Sanders. He's a really good player who doesn't get a lot of love, at least first round love in my opinion. He's just a really good penetrating defensive tackle. He might have been overshadowed by how good South Carolina's offensive line was last year, but I still think TJ Sanders is a fringe first round player. So getting him here at 48, I think that's a really, really good pick. On to 49, we got the Cincinnati Bengals, and we ended up going with Walter Nolan in the first round to help fix that defense. Now we could go with another defensive pick here in a JT Tuimoloau, Xavier Watts, Omar Norman Lott. Like, these are options that we could go for the Bengals, but I also think they're going to be losing T. Higgins in free agency, and who's a pretty good T. Higgins replacement that's still on the board. that is a Jaden Higgins, who's 6'4", 215, similar size to T. Higgins. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as T. Higgins, but he can kind of play the same role that T. Higgins played. You know, really good drop rate at 2.2%, contested catch rate at a 58.3. He's a, you know, jump ball guy who's not going to drop the ball much. That's what the Bengals, you know, loved with T. Higgins when they took him in the second round. So we're going to go with Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State to be that T. Higgins replacement. On to number 50, we got the Seattle Seahawks, who ended up going with Jalen Walker in the first round. Now we're going to look to go with probably a guard. Like I said, the Seahawks owner doesn't really value guard. He doesn't want to pay a guard big money, but he also doesn't want to draft one that high. I think in the second round, you could look to go with guard. You know, there's no true guards on the board that I'm willing to take, but with a guy like Wyatt Milum, who played tackle for West Virginia, more specifically left tackle, I think he could profile to move into left guard and be a really good guard prospect for the Seahawks, who desperately need guard help. So we're going to go with Wyatt Milum out of West Virginia. 51, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, ended up going Jahad Campbell in the first round. Now we're going to look to get an edge rusher to pair alongside Yaya Diaby. When you look at the board, Lana Jackson, JT Tuimoloau, Kyle Kennard, really good options here. But I did ultimately decide to go with a JT Tuimoloau. I think he's the most refined prospect still on the board here. He might not wow you with his pass rush production, only 22 pressures, 15 sacks though. So when he was getting pressures, he was getting after the quarterback. But he's also really good at setting the edge and being a good run stopper as well. He's just a do-good player, and so I think that's what the Buccaneers would like to do to pair alongside with Yaya Diaby. 52, we got the Broncos, and we had them going with Malachi Starks in the first round. I think now you get Bo Nix some help at the receiver position. You know, Courtland Sutton's that good X receiver. Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, both really good vertical slot options, or vertical options in general. You know, Marvin Mims played a lot on the outside, so I think they could use a slot receiver. And with a guy like Xavier Restrepo, who's just such a good receiver, but is kind of pigeonholed to being a slot receiver at 5'10", 198, I think the Broncos could use him to be that slot guy and, you know, be kind of Bo Nix's best friend on short yardage situations. Have Troy Franklin be that deep threat and or Marvin Mims, and then Courtland Sutton being that X receiver. I think that would be a really good receiving core for the Broncos and Bo Nix. 53 here, we got the Steelers. We ended up going to Matthew Golden in the first round. Now we're going to look to get defensive back help. When we look at the board here, Darian Porter, who's a big lanky receiver at 6'4", 200 pounds, similar to a Joey Porter who they drafted a year or two ago. So I think that's a really good option. Maxwell Harrison as well, although he had a bit of a down year last year. Still think he's a second round talent. Melo Dawson, Kobe Bryant, serviceable guys here. But I think Darian Porter is the guy here. You know, really good zone coverage corner, lanky guy, similar to a Joey Porter who the Steelers, you know, obviously liked because they took him in the second round. I think it was 2 years ago. So we're going to look to pair up Joey Porter with another Porter and Darian Porter. 54 here, we got the Chargers, who ended up going with Colston Loveland in the first round. Jim Harbaugh got his guy. Now we're going to look to go with maybe a defensive interior guy. You know, the Chargers are built from the trenches. That's just how Jim Harbaugh likes to do things. And I think they could use defensive tackle help. A guy like Omar Norman Lott could be that guy. You know, 6'3", 315 pounds, could, you know, clog the middle, be a good run stopper as well as a pass rusher. That's exactly what the Chargers need. When you look at their depth chart, Morgan Fox, Poona Ford, both free agents. Joey Bosa, not the same guy he used to be. You know, Khalil Mack, also free agent. Like, their trenches are, most of their trenches are free agents. You know, Tuli Tuipulotu is a really good, you know, rotational guy they have, but I really think they need to look to, you know, fix the trenches. Poona Ford, Morgan Fox, both free agents. I don't see them bringing both of them back, so replacing them with the Omar Norman Lott, I think that's a really good option. 55, we got the Packers, who ended up going Kenneth Grant in the first round. Now we're going to look to go secondary. You know, Jair Alexander's injured a lot, and so they can't rely on Jair Alexander much more. And so I think we're going to go with the Maxwell Harrison. Like I said, he did have a bit of a down year, but I do think he's a good zone coverage corner. I think he could play man as well. So we're going to go with Maxwell Harrison to the Packers. 56 here, we got the Buffalo Bills, and I think that we ended up going, Nicky Manwari in the first round to be that DeMar Hamlin replacement. And I think Josh Allen did a lot with little receiving talent last year. That's why he won the MVP. So I think they could get someone to pair alongside Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir, who had a bit of a breakout season. And I think a guy like Jalen Royals could be that guy. Khalil Shakir can be that slot guy, Keon Coleman being the X receiver, Jalen Royals being that deep threat at 6 foot, 205 pounds. He's a speedy receiver. He's big enough to play on the outside. And I think if the play breaks down, Josh Allen's going to look to find Jalen Royals. So we're going to go with Jalen Royals. I think it's a really good fit here. On to 57, we got the Houston Texans, and we went receiver Emeka Egbuka in the first round. Now we're going to look to go trenches. They need to help protect CJ Stroud, and a guy like Jonas Savaiinaea could do that. Same with Cameron Williams, Ozzie Toropilo as well. We're going to go ahead and look at the Texans depth chart here. Yeah, look, Titus Howard's just not good anymore. Jarrett Patterson's been solid. Shaq Mason as well. Blake Fisher. I like him a little bit better at guard or as a swing tackle. I don't think he should be a starting right tackle. So we could look to go with a Jonas Savaiinaea to either play right tackle or be that guard replacement for Titus Howard. So I think Jonas Savaiinaea is the perfect fit for the Texans here. 58, we got the Carolina Panthers. Ended up going Mike Green in the first round. Now we're going to look to go safety, I think. Looking at the Panthers depth chart, they need defensive help badly. Xavier Woods, a free agent. Damani Richardson's a rookie who played solid, but could also look to be a little bit replaceable. So we're going to look to go with a good ball hawking safety. And, that's cornerback. I think we could look to go Xavier Watts to be that kind of box safety. I believe he played a good amount in the box last year. Yeah, 306 in the box, 465 deep, 174 in the slot. So he's just a versatile piece on that defense. So I think he could play a lot of roles for the Panthers. He could be that Xavier Woods replacement, but he can also play a little bit of deep high safety, which is what Damani Richardson plays. Or he could be that slot receiver or slot cornerback if they're not as big of a fan of Shaw Smith-Wade, which I am. But overall, I think Xavier Watts could be a really good Xavier Woods replacement. 59, we got the Ravens, and they need tackle help. When you look at their depth chart, Ronnie Stanley is a free agent. Are they going to want to re-sign him on a big deal? I mean, he deserves it, but it just so happened that he had his first fully healthy season with the Ravens on a contract year. Is that going to be the case next year? I have my doubts. Patrick Mekari is also a free agent as well, and he also wasn't that good for them. Roger Rosengarten's a rookie, didn't have the best season at right tackle, but I think he could stick. Daniel Falalele, also not the best. Really, Tyler Linderbaum's the only really good offensive lineman for the future if they don't bring back Ronnie Stanley. So I think you got to go offensive line here and maybe go with a guy like Cameron Williams, who is a bit of a raw prospect but could end up being a really good tackle, and he could end up being that Ronnie Stanley replacement, or he could play in replacement of a Roger Rosengarten. Maybe move Roger Rosengarten to left guard to replace Patrick Mekari as well. They could do a lot with the Cameron Williams, but I think he could help him regardless of where he plays. Number 60 here, we got the Lions. We ended up going with Jack Sawyer in the first round. Now I think we can look to go with a receiver. That's not part of their needs. I don't really think interior offensive line is one of their needs. We've addressed edge. Could go linebacker, but I think receiver could also be an option here. Amon-Ra St. Brown's a really good wide receiver one, a really good slot option. Jameson Williams a really good deep option, but they don't have that X receiver. And I don't necessarily think an X receiver has to be the best receiver, but I think Trey Harris could be an X receiver at 6'3", 210 pounds. Having him out on the outside, Amon-Ra in the slot, and then J-Mo being that deep option, I think that's a really good fit. I also like Alec Eumanour when he's on the board, but he ended up going to... Where did we have him going? We had him going early, right? Yeah, we had him going to the Saints at 40. But I think Trey Harris is also a really good option here. Trey Harris is one of my guys. I think he's a top 7 receiver in this class, in my opinion. So we're going to go with Trey Harris to be the Lions' X receiver. Moving on to 61, we got the Washington Commanders. Ended up going Josh Connerly in the first round. Now we're going to look to get some pass rush help. They really don't have anyone on the edge. Their defensive tackles are really good with, Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, Johnny Newton. But out on the edge, they don't really have anybody. So we're going to look to go with Landon Jackson here. He's a big edge rusher at 6'7", 280. He's able to sit at the edge, but he's also developed into a pretty good pass rusher. 7 sacks isn't the best, but I think he could end up keep developing to be a really good pass rusher. But, day one, you're getting a really good run defender. So we're going to go with Landon Jackson to the Commanders. 62, we got the Bills on the board again. Nick Monwari in the first round. We just went Jalen Royals. Now we're going to look to go with defensive tackle. And a guy like Deon Walker, who was almost a consensus first round pick to begin the season, kind of fell out of the first round. I think he's a, mid to late day 2 type of player. So getting him here at 62 is a good pick in my opinion. He could be that big bodied run stopper. And he's also got some pass rush juice to him too, but you're drafting him to be that run stopper. 63, we got the Kansas City Chiefs, and we're going to look to go with offensive line here. Like I said, in the first round, we ended up selecting the pass on offensive tackle and go Tyleik Williams because I didn't quite like the value of offensive linemen where they were picking at 31. Here at 63, we can look, and we got a guy like Ozzy Trapillo who could be a really good tackle option for him. They had Joe Thuney playing tackle, which just isn't really a good idea. Ozzy Trapillo is 6'8", 309 pounds. I think he could be a very good tackle. Needs some development, obviously. You're drafting him late round 2. He's not going to be an amazing player right away. Marcus Bowe could be a offensive line option. Do I think he'll be able to stick at tackle? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not sure. Charles Grant's a really good player, but I don't think he's a tackle. Anthony Bell, and I don't think he's worth a pick here. So we're going to end up going with Ozzy Trapillo here to be either left tackle, probably the left tackle of the future. And then finishing out round 2 of the draft, we got the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think we're going to go with linebacker here. We ended up going with Donovan Ezeraku to round out the first round to be that Josh Sweat replacement. Now we're going to look to go with linebacker here because Oren Burks is good. Nakobe Dean's good, but I don't know if he's going to be ready to start the season. He might be. I'm not sure. I believe he tore his patellar tendon in the playoffs. And then Zach Bond's a free agent. Now, I'm pretty sure going into the offseason, the Eagles' number 1 priority is going to be retaining Zach Bond. But is there a chance that he doesn't stay? There's a chance. And if that is the case, I think a guy like Demetrius Knight could be a really good replacement. Good size, good roaming safety. We're going to go with Demetrius Knight, I think. Missed tackle rate's a little bit up there, but I think he's a really good run defender. So we're going to go with Demetrius Knight here. Alright, moving into the third round here. We're going to speed it up just a little bit because I don't want this video to end up being like an hour long. So, coming in, first pick of the third round, we got the New York Giants. Ended up going with Shedeur Sanders in the first round, Benjamin Morrison in the second. Rounding out to be a pretty nice draft for the Giants. Now we're going to look to go offensive line help. And a guy like Charles Grant still on the board here. He is developmental, yes, but he played very, very good at William & Mary. 6'4", 300 pounds. He does have length to maybe stick at tackle, but I think he could be a really good guard, and that's kind of what the Giants need. They need someone to replace Greg Van Roten. Jermaine Illuminor could stick at right tackle for 1 more year. So we're going to go with Charles Grant to be a guard for us, to be that right guard replacement for Greg Van Roten. 66, we got the Kansas City Chiefs, and I think we're going to get a little bit fancy here. We've went trenches both pick. Tyleik Williams in the first round, Ozzy Trapillo we just took. Now we're going to look to go with a running back here. Kareem Hunt was really good for the Chiefs this season, but he's not, going to be their future running back. He's, he came into the league the same time as Patrick Mahomes, and running backs don't last too long. So, he's not a part of their future. Isaiah Pacheco came back from injury. Didn't look like the same Isaiah Pacheco, I'm going to be honest. Do I think he's going to be out of their long-term future? Probably not. But I do think they're going to look to try to get another running back in the building. Isaiah Pacheco is a big, hard running back. Getting a guy like Dylan Sampson, who's more of a shifty, smaller option at running back, but could be a big play threat. I think him and Isaiah Pacheco could be a really good tandem there in Kansas City. So we're going to go with Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee. On to 67, we got the Cleveland Browns. Ended up going Abdul Carter in the first, Omarion Hampton in the second. Now we got 2 third-round picks. And with the first of the 2 third-round picks, I think we're going to double dip at edge rusher. We took Abdul Carter, but Myles Garrett's probably not going to be on the team next year. And besides Myles Garrett, they don't really have anything out on the edge. So Abdul Carter can fill one of those spots. Now we can go with a guy like Kyle Kennard, who could be a rotational guy alongside Isaiah McGuire. So we're going to go with Kyle Kennard out of South Carolina. 68, we got the Las Vegas Raiders. Ended up going with Tetairoa McMillan, then Jahdae Barron. Really good draft for the Raiders so far. They also got 2 third-round picks. And I think we're still going to pass on quarterback. You know, we still could go with a Dylan Gabriel or a Jalen Milroe. I think that's an option for sure. But we're actually going to go with running back here. They don't really have any running backs. You know, they got Sincere McCormick, Amir Abdullah, who's a free agent, Alexander Madison's who's a free agent, and then Zamir White. Like, Dylan Laub, I can't remember how to pronounce his name. Like, they don't have a good starting running back. And luckily for them, there's still a lot of really good starting caliber running backs here. You know, and I think it's more likely that they go with one of these Ohio State running backs because, you know, their offensive coordinator is Chip Kelly now, who was, you know, just the Ohio State Buckeyes offensive coordinator last season when they won the championship. So I think he would want to take one of these 2 guys, and I'm going to end up going TreVeyon Henderson. Could easily be a Quinshon Judkins as well, but I'm just slightly higher on TreVeyon Henderson. 69, we got the Patriots, and, you know, Mike Vrabel as the head coach, you know, he loves to run the ball. The Patriots don't really have, you know, a good running back. Ramondre Stevenson's fine. Zeke was, you know, kind of a failure. A guy like Cam Scatterbo just screams Mike Vrabel. So we're going to go with Cam Scatterbo to be that just tough running back for him. Number 70, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think this is where we could go cornerback. We ended up going Mason Graham in the first, Gray Zabel in the second. I think we could go cornerback here. You know, there's not much left. You know, Milo Dotson, I like a lot. Kobe Bryant, solid. Didn't have as good of a season, in my opinion, as last year. But I think Milo Dotson is a good option here. 6'1", 190. I think he's solid. I think he's really solid. I think he's a little bit better in zone coverage, but I think he could play both at a high level. You know, 5 interceptions last season. That's pretty good. He's a ball hawking cornerback. Pair him alongside Tyson Campbell. And then they could also obviously sign someone in free agency as well. A lot of these third-round players, I might talk about them as like they're going to be starters, but, you know, most of these third-round players are going to be developmental backups, at least year 1. 71, we got the Saints. Ended up going Michael Williams and Alec Ayumanor. Now we're going to look to go tight end. They don't really have a tight end option on the team. You know, Foster Monroe's solid, but he's not a receiving threat. Taysom Hill, you know, he's not much of a threat nowadays. Juwan Johnson's a free agent. I think we could go tight end here. And there's 4 really good ones on the board here. You know, there's a sizable drop-off from a Tyler Warren and a Colston Loveland, but now there's 4 really good ones, and a Gunnar Helm, who had a breakout season at Texas, Elijah Arroyo, who had a really good Senior Bowl, Mason Taylor had a good season at LSU, and then Harold Fannin had a very good receiving season with, you know, 1,500 yards. So, I mean, incredible season from Harold Fannin. And I think the Saints would want to get a receiving threat. Foster Monroe can, you know, be that inline tight end. I think Harold Fannin could be a big slot option. And they don't have a head coach or, you know, coaching staff as of right now, so I can't really make any connections there. But, you know, I just think Harold Fannin is a good player and is deserving of this pick here. On to 72, we got the Chicago Bears. Ended up going Ashton Jeanty in the first, followed that by Tyler Booker and Princely Umamielen in the second. Here with this third-round pick, I think we could look to go offensive line again. And with a guy like Marcus Bowe still on the board out of Purdue, he could play either tackle or guard for the Bears, whichever one they prefer. I think he's a versatile piece. You know, Bears need all the offensive line they can get, and I think with a guy like Ben Johnson in his first year, he's going to want to shore up the offensive line and have a rushing attack, and that's what we've set the Bears up to do. 73, we got the Raiders again. Again, Tetairoa McMillan, Jahdae Barron, TreVeyon Henderson. Now we're going to look to go with a linebacker. We're going to pass on quarterback. We're going to wait until next year to get a quarterback. They can sign a bridge guy like a Jameis Winston or a Kirk Cousins, whatever, in free agency. We're going to look to go linebacker here because Carson Schwessinger is, I think, how you pronounce it. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I do know he's a fantastic prospect. You know, a bit undersized at 6'2", 225 to play linebacker, but he's a really, really good athlete, and I think the Raiders would love to have him. 74, we got the Carolina Panthers. You know, we went, I believe, defense so far. Yeah, Mike Green, Xavier Watts. Now I think we look to get Bryce Young some receiving help. Jalen Croker is a good option. Xavier Legette's had a solid rookie season. Adam Thielen is, he's not going to be able to play forever. So I think they could look to get a really good slot option here. And a guy like Isaiah Bond could be that. I know he had a down year at Texas, but I still think he has a lot of talent. 5'11", 180, probably one of the fastest receivers in this class. I think the Panthers would love to have him. I think he would be a really good receiving option for Bryce Young. 75 here, we got the 49ers. And we ended up going with Will Johnson in the first, Derek Harmon in the second. Really good draft so far. And they got two third-round picks here. So with this first pick, I think this is where we go with offensive line help. Trent Williams is up there in age. He's not going to be able to play forever. He was also injured this season. Cole McKivitz is a replaceable right tackle. So I think Anthony Belton could probably be a backup year one, but learn behind Trent Williams to be that eventual Trent Williams replacement. So we're going to go with Anthony Belton out of North Carolina State. 76, we got the Cowboys. Ended up going Luther Burden in the first, Caleb Johnson in the second. Now we're going to look to get defensive line help. Osia Digizua is probably going to be leaving in free agency, so we're going to look to get his replacement. And a guy like Darius Alexander, you don't hear much talk of how good Darius Alexander was for Toledo. Again, he's a small school guy, maybe that's why, but he was a really, really good run defender. His pass rush moveset isn't anything special. Again, only 25 hurries, 4 sacks. But look at that run defense grade, 90.3. That's an elite run defense grade. And at 6'4", 310, I think he could develop into being even a better player by developing a pass rush moveset. But day one, he's going to be a really, really good run defender, which is something that Cowboys have struggled with. Mozzie Smith, who has kind of been a bust of a first-round pick the past few years. 77, we got the Patriots. Again, Travis Hunter, Ariante Irizarry, and then Cam Scatterbo we just took. Now we're going to look to get an edge rusher. Keon Weiss, a really good player. But besides that, Christian Barmore hopefully can come back better than ever. Anthony Jennings, they don't have anyone. They don't have anyone out on the edge. They need someone that could, just scream off the edge. And I know just the guy for that. And that's a Josiah Stewart. Is he a good run defender? Not really, but he had one of the best pass rush win rates in the entire college football. And he's a bit undersized, 6'1", 245. He's not going to be a good run defender in the NFL. That's just what it's going to be. He's going to be a pass rush only type of guy, but I think he could be a 10+ sack guy in the NFL. Only 9 sacks in 2024, but I think he could develop into being around a 10 sack guy in the NFL. So we're going to go with him to the Patriots to be a rotational guy in that defensive line room. 78, we got the Cardinals. Ended up going Shamar Stewart, then Donovan Jackson. Now we're going to look to get a receiver to pair up alongside Marvin Harrison Jr. and a Michael Wilson, because I do believe Greg Dortch is a free agent. And a guy like Tez Johnson, who's very small, 5'10", 165, he has a lot of fans in the draft community. And I might be one of them. I think Tez Johnson is a really good prospect, but you got to understand that he is extremely undersized. We had the same talk about Tank Dell a couple years ago, and he ended up being a pretty good receiver prospect so far, but he's been injury prone. He's broke his leg basically twice, or he's had, season-ending injuries both years he's been in the NFL. You got to worry about that with Tez Johnson. But, coming up into the back end of the third round, I think the Cardinals would be okay with, taking a chance on a Tez Johnson to be that slot receiver for him. 79, we got the Commanders. Ended up going Josh Connerly in the first, Landon Jackson in the second. Still a lot of holes to fix here at 79. But we're going to look to go with a receiver to pair alongside Terry McLaurin. And a guy like Savion Williams, I think if the right team drafts him, could be a really good player. I think Cliff Kingsbury can find a really good role for him. 6'5", 225. He's a really good receiver for TCU, but he also ran the ball a bit. I don't know if it's going to show it anywhere here. Yeah, they're not going to show his rushing efficiency, but he took a couple snaps at running back too and was really good. Doesn't have the best hands, a bit clunky when it comes to that, but overall, I think he could be a really good receiver for the Commanders. Coming in at 80, we got the Indianapolis Colts. Ended up going Tyler Warren in the first, Siobhan Ravel in the second. Really good draft so far for him. I think we could look to go with linebacker here because I think it's EJ Speed that's a free agent. I think we're going to go with Chris Paul Jr. 6'1", 235, a little bit on the shorter side, but I think he's a really good run defender, and he's also pretty good in pass coverage as well. I think he could be a really good fit for the Colts. On to the Bengals here. We ended up going Walter Nolan in the first and then getting that T. Higgins replacement and a Jaden Higgins. I didn't even realize, same last name. But here at 81, I think we got to go back to the defensive route. You know, they just need tons of help on that defense, and I think a Sebastian Castro could really, really help. Again, not the best 2024, but a really, really good 2023, and I think he could be a really, really good slot cornerback for the Bengals, who are in desperate need of any talent they can get on the defensive side of the ball. 82, we got the Seahawks, ended up going Jalen Walker in the first, Wyatt Milam in the second. I think we could look to go edge rusher here. You know, Jordan Burch is probably a little bit too talented. Same with Jared Ivey. Both pretty good edge rushers that are probably a little too talented to still be here at 82. So I'm going to pick between one of these two guys. And I think I'm going to go with the Jordan Burch. 6'6", 295. He's a bigger bodied guy. Could maybe play a little bit of 4-eye as well. He majority played outside of the tackle for Oregon, but he also played over the tackle at 4-eye as well. I think he could be a good fit for the Seahawks. 83, we got the Buccaneers. Ended up going Jihad Campbell, then JT Tuimoloau. Now I think we're going to shift our focus to the offensive side of the ball. Chris Godwin suffered a pretty gruesome injury and is also a free agent. I don't see him coming back. You know, Mike Evans is a 1,000-yard machine, but he's also up there in age. He's not going to be a great receiver forever. So I think we got to look to the future. And I think a guy like Jalen Noel, who is going to be primarily a slot wide receiver only, but I think he could be that Chris Godwin replacement in the slot. So we're going to go with Jalen Noel. 84, we got the Broncos, and we're going Malachi Starks and Xavier Restrepo. Here at 84, I think we're going to go with tight end. Sean Payton wants to get his tight end, his Jimmy Graham per se. And I think a guy like Gunnar Helm, who had a breakout season for Texas, 6'5", 250, he's got the size to be a Sean Payton type of guy. So we're going to go with Gunnar Helm out of Texas. Now here at 85, we got the Steelers. I don't think Steelers fans are going to like this a lot. We ended up going Matthew Golden in the first, Darian Porter in the second. I think this could be a quarterback spot. You know, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are both free agents. There's a possibility that, they're not able to retain either one, and they're going to need a quarterback for the future. And I think a Jalen Milroe could be that guy for sure. 6'2", 225, really good athlete. Needs a lot of development. Trust me. Could also be Jackson Dart here. A lot of people love having Jackson Dart go in round 2. He slid here to round 3 so far. But I think we're going to go with Jalen Milroe. I think he could be everything that Justin Fields was, but has the potential to be a lot better than a Justin Fields. So we're going to go with Jalen Milroe here at 85. Hate me, Steelers fans. I don't care. 86 here we got the Chargers. Colston Loveland in the first round. Omar Norman Lott in the second. Now we're going to look to get a running back. J.K. Dobbins had a phenomenal year for the Chargers, but can we trust him to be a really good running back and a healthy running back? Probably not. Guy like Quinshon Judkins, he wasn't the same Quinshon Judkins as he was at Ole Miss, in my opinion, but it doesn't mean he was bad at Ohio State. I think he definitely deserves to go in round 3. And a team like the Chargers would probably utilize him to his fullest ability. So we're going to go with Quinshon Judkins to the Chargers to have him and J.K. Dobbins be a really good running back duo. 87 here we got the Packers. Ended up going Kenneth Grant, then Maxwell Harrison. Now we're going to look to go with offensive line here. Josh Myers is a free agent. Elton Jenkins isn't the youngest guy in the world, I do not believe. He at 29. He's about to be on the wrong side of 30. So he could also be a potential replacement down the line. And I think a guy like Tate Ratledge could be that guy. He's got a lot of experience at right tackle, but I also think he could play center if you really wanted him to. So he could be that Josh Myers replacement year 1, and then also be that eventual Elton Jenkins replacement as well. 88, we got the Jaguars, and ended up going Mason Graham, Gray Zabel, then Miller Dotson. Now we got the second of their 3rd round pick. And I think this is where we could go edge rusher. I know they have Josh Hines Allen and Trayvon Walker, but every good defensive line has a good rotation as well. And I think with Jared Ivey still on the board, I think it would be hard for the Jaguars to pass up on him. He's a good athlete, good size. That's what the Jaguars like for their edge rushers. So I think he's a Jaguars pick here. We're going to go with him to be a rotational guy in that defense. 89, here we got the Texans, and then we're going Emeka Egbuka, then Jonah Savaiinaea. Now here in the third round, I think we go with trenches here and go with an Alfred Collins. Fatukasi is a free agent. Tim Settle isn't, anything special in the middle. So I think getting a solid defensive tackle is a really good idea for the Texans. Alfred Collins is that. He's not much of a pass rusher, but he's a really good run defender. So we're going to go with Alfred Collins to the Texans here. All right, I believe we got 10 picks left, so let's try to burn these out, because I think this video is going to be about an hour long. So here at 90, we got the Rams. Ended up going Kelvin Banks. Now they got two third-round picks here. We're going to look to go tight end here. Looking at the Rams depth chart, Tyler Higbee's a solid tight end, but, he's not irreplaceable by any means. And with some really good tight ends still on the board here, with an Elijah Arroyo or a Mason Taylor, I think they got to go with one of these two guys. And with the Senior Bowl that Elijah Arroyo had, I think he's the pick here. I think that, he has the size to, he doesn't necessarily have the size to be an inline tight end, in my opinion. But, at Miami, he had 165 snaps there, 216 slot snaps. So he is more of a wide tight end than he is an inline tight end. But I think he could play both at a pretty alright level. And I think the Rams and Sean McVay could find a really good spot for him in their offense. Moving on to 91, we got the Baltimore Ravens, and I think this is where we go receiver. We ended up going with Nick Scorton in the first and then Cameron Williams in the second. I think we got to get a receiver to pair alongside Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman. So we're going to look to go with a guy like Torrey Horton, who I believe was injured. Yeah, he was injured most of last season, only played 5 games. But in 2023, he was draft eligible, and I was very, very high on him in the 2023 draft. So I don't think much has changed, going into 2024 except for his injury. But here at 91, I think he could be a really good receiver to play on the outside. So you have Rashad Bateman on the outside as well as Torrey Horton, and then Zay Flowers in the slot. Really good receiving trio in my opinion. 92, we got the New York Jets. Ended up going Josh Simmons in the first round and Trey Amos in the second round. Now we're going to look to get our quarterback. Yes, Aaron Rodgers is probably not going to be back. Besides that, Jordan Travis, I liked at Florida State, but I don't think he's a starting NFL quarterback. A lot of people seem to think Jackson Dart can eventually be a starting NFL caliber quarterback. Do I want him starting day one for the Packers? No. I think Tyrod Taylor can, maybe even play the full 2025 season. They're not going to be trying to win if Aaron Rodgers doesn't come back. So who cares if they don't win many games next year? Have Jackson Dart sit behind and just develop and learn an NFL offense, because the knock with Ole Miss quarterbacks is that they don't translate great to the NFL because of the offense that they're in. So having him develop, in the shadows and just learn as much as he can year one, I think he could end up being a good quarterback in the NFL as long as he's not rushed in to start. And I hope the Jets wouldn't do that. Here at 93, we got the New Orleans Saints, and ended up going Michael Williams in the first, Elika Umanor in the second, and then with our first third-round pick, we went Harold Fannin Jr. Now here with our second third-round pick, I think we could look to go safety. Looking at it, Will Harris is a free agent. Jordan Howden's a solid backup, but he's nothing special. Tyrann Mathieu also good, but he's also like 32 years old. He'll be going into his 33 season next year, so he's not going to be around forever either. So I think getting a safety is a good option here. And with Kevin Winston on the board here, I was a huge fan of him in 2023. Was injured all of 2024, basically only played 2 games. But in 2023, he was an amazing player. So I think he will slip because of his injury. But, here at 93, I think that's a very, very good pick for the Saints to be that safety alongside Tyrann Mathieu, and then eventually be that Tyrann Mathieu replacement as well. 94, here we got the Cleveland Browns. Ended up going with Abdul Carter in the first, Amarian Hampton in the second, and then Kyle Kennard with their first pick in the third round. So we had them double dipping with edge rusher, and then we got Amarian Hampton to be that Nick Chubb replacement. Now we're going to look to get offensive line help, because that offensive line was really good like 2-3 years ago, but it's pretty old now. And a guy like Jalen Rivers he's a good player, but I don't think he's starting caliber in my opinion. James Hudson's a free agent, Jedrick Wills as well. Right tackle, they got Jack Conklin. DeJuan Jones, I think could, be a right tackle, but Jack Conklin, again, he'll be going into his 31 season. I don't know. I think you could look to just get a backup tackle. I mean, James Hudson, Jedrick Wills, both free agents. I think that Jack Conklin can be your left tackle, DeJuan Jones be your right tackle, and then maybe just have Jalen Rivers be that, you know, be that swing tackle, and hell, maybe he can develop into a starting tackle one day. But they just need tackle depth, so we're gonna go with Jalen Rivers out of Miami. 95, we got the Chiefs, and we had them going Tyleik Williams, Ozzie Trapillo, and then Dylan Sampson. Now, looking at their depth chart, I think that Nick Bolton's a free agent. He's probably going to get paid by someone. Drew Tranquill, 29, not the youngest guy. I'm a big fan of Leo Chenal, though, so I think he's part of their future. But if they're not able to retain Nick Bolton, I think that Jeffrey Bassa could be a option here. 6'2", 235, good athlete. This is with the caveat that they're not able to retain Nick Bolton, but we're going to go with Jeffrey Bassa to the Kansas City Chiefs. Here at 96, we got the Eagles, and I think, where did we go? We ended up going Donovan Ezeraku and then Demetrius Knight in the second. Now I think we could look to go offensive line here to get that Lane Johnson replacement, but when you look at the board, there's not much there. Ajani Cornelius, I'm a big fan of, but here at 96, I think that's a little rich in my opinion. Emory Jones is good, but I think he's a guard. So there's just not much to go here to be that Lane Johnson replacement. So we're not going to end up doing that. We're going to end up going with tight end. And, Dallas Goedert still got a lot of juice left in him, but the Eagles love getting the replacements in the door a year or two early to develop. And I think a guy like Mason Taylor could be that Dallas Goedert replacement in like a year or two. So we're going to go with Mason Taylor out of LSU. 97, we got the Minnesota Vikings. Ended up going Armand Membu in the first round. Now we got their third round pick here. And, Aaron Jones is a good player, but he is a free agent, same with Cam Akers. So the only running back they have under contract is a Ty Chandler, and I don't think that's good enough. So we're going to go with a guy like Devin Neal here. I'm a big fan of Devin Neal. 5'11", 215. He's a really shifty running back who also has a really good center of gravity as well. So we're going to go with him. Even if they do retain Aaron Jones Jr., I think him and Devin Neal could be a really good tandem in the backfield too. 98 here, we got the Dolphins. Ended up going Will Campbell in the first, TJ Sanders in the second. Now we're going to look to go safety here because I do think that they are going to let Javon Holland go in free agency. And if that is the case, we're going to go with a guy like Andrew Makuba, who had a really, really good season for Texas. I believe in one of the mock drafts I've reacted to, he was a late first round pick, so him being here at the back end of the third round, I think is possible, but I think it would be a steal for the Dolphins to get to be that Javon Holland replacement. 99 here, we got the 49ers, and we ended up going with Will Johnson, Derek Harmon, and then Anthony Belton. Now we're going to look to go edge rusher here. Looking at their depth chart, Nick Bosa, really good player, obviously, but Leonard Floyd, he's a good starter, but they could also use a rotational pass rusher as well. So we're gonna look to go edge rusher here. Kamen Rucker could be an option here. Quadarius Robinson, not the most familiar with, so I'll have to watch a little bit of tape on him. 6'5", 241, a little small, but I don't know much about him, so we're not gonna go with him. Ashton Jelote, really good option. David Walker, small school guy, but a really productive edge rusher. Ooh, see, I wasn't going to Ashton Jelote. That's who I have on my board here. But I just might have talked myself into David Walker. He would be a rotational edge rusher for him, at least year one. And he has just such a good season. You know what? Screw it. Let's go David Walker. Ashton Jelote could also be the pick here, but we're going to go David Walker. And then coming in, rounding out this mock draft, we got pick 100, LA Rams. We're going to go with linebacker here. Where's linebacker at? Right here. And we're going to go with Barrett Carter. He's been eligible for a couple years. He's been in a lot of first-round mock drafts about a year ago. Fell here to the back end of the third round. Really athletic guy, sideline to sideline type of linebacker. I think he could be the pick here, and he is going to be the pick here. And that is going to end this mock draft. Looking here, here's a first round recap. That video is on my channel already. It was, posted yesterday. But let's go to the full results. So again, first round was yesterday. Make sure you go watch that video. Round 2, here it is. Just in case you missed any picks, I'm going to scroll through them. And that is going to be the mock draft. Let me know what you guys think of this mock draft. Again, it's still early in the process. You know, once free agency happens, we'll get a clearer idea of what the team's needs actually are going to be. But with that being said, I hope you liked the video. Consider subscribing. There's going to be a lot more mock drafts in the future. And as always, I'm the Draft Nerd, and thanks for watching.